Hey guys, welcome to Red and Blue, the channel on YouTube for all things PSG in English. Today we're in the middle of an international game window, but PSG news is definitely not slowing down. I think one of the topics that's made headlines in the past few days has been about transfer and mercato, and PSG's appetite for a new central defender. Supposedly on the right side of central defense, so the position that typically Marquinhos tends to play. And today I wanted to go a little bit deeper, look at the players who we know are the top options for PSG, but also offer a couple of potential alternatives that I think could be interesting for PSG to look at. So first, why does PSG need a defender? Marquinhos has had a standard season. Obviously, he's our captain as well, and he just lifted the Champions League above his head. But at the same time, he's not getting any younger. He's, I think, the only PSG player in our starting 11 that's above 30 years old. I think he's 32 at that point. And he doesn't really have a substitute available within the PSG squad at the moment. Typically what happened when he had to be rotated this season was that Beraldo, who's more of a left side central defender, would cover on the right, which is less than ideal because Beraldo is left-footed, and so in terms of lines of passing and so on, it definitely created some challenges, and also Beraldo has proven to be less than fully fledged and fully formed as a defender. And so sometimes his match appearances have been slightly underwhelming and definitely pose some questions. So we definitely need someone. An interesting one as well is that I think up until recently PSG was hinting that they wanted someone in central defense, but who could also slide on the right and potentially also cover Hakimi's position. That doesn't seem to be the case anymore, so right now we'll focus on really that pure central defense player, and not so much someone who can slide to the right as well. And then the last point I wanted to mention before we dig into the different options, that there is a transfer window going on right now. FIFA created it to give the clubs a chance to reinforce their squad ahead of the Clubs World Cup. And so if PSG sign anyone, they need to do it in the next 4 days. The player needs to be signed and registered before the 10th of June. So it is a very short window, but PSG has definitely sent out signals that they do want to recruit a player in that central defense position within that time frame. So things could be moving pretty fast. Cool, so let's dive into the players that we're looking at. The first one, and I think the one that's been publicly talked about as a top contender, is Ukrainian international Ilya Zabarnyi. He's a 21-year-old, he plays for Bournemouth in the Premier League, he's at 38 appearances this season, and he already has 36 senior caps for Ukraine national team, which is pretty insane at his age. A very, very strong defender. The pairings that he had with Zeno, who just signed for Real Madrid, was really one of the top ones and definitely the most promising one in the Premier League this season. And I think Zabarnyi, in terms of his strengths, he's got a very high defensive IQ. He's among the top 10 in the Premier League for blocks and clearances per 90, so he knows where to position himself and how to be impactful in defense. He's good, okay to good, I would say, when it comes to passing under pressure. I think here it's kind of a tricky one because I think the stats look very good for him, but at the same time he wasn't necessarily the main output for passing the ball out of defense for his team, and so maybe he had less tricky passing to do or less passing under pressure to do, and so the stats might look a little bit inflated versus his actual skill set. It's not a weak point by any means, but I think it's something where for a team like PSG, and especially for that Marquinhos position, which is really the ball-playing part of the defense, it could be a little bit of a question mark, and I think something where Luis Campos and Luis Enrique would need to dig a little bit deeper. Other strengths for him, he's strong in the air. wins above 60% of his headers in the Premier League, which is quite strong. Generally calm under pressure, rarely put out of position. He's a very strong defender. At the same time, my personal feeling is that he might be a little bit closer to a Pacho style of player than a Marquinhos style of player, which could be good in a way because Pacho's typical substitute is going to be Beraldo, and so Beraldo on his side is more of a Marquinhos type of player. So it could make for an interesting pairing. But if we're looking for a player who can step up and replace Marquinhos in the long run, it's a question mark whether he's already that profile or whether like he would have a runway ahead of himself in terms of development. He is a tremendously exciting youngster and someone who's got like top level skills already. So not saying we shouldn't sign him or anything. I'm just saying like that profile question is one that I'm sure Luis Enrique and Luis Campos are thinking about, and in terms of how they organize their squad. Second top player that a lot of media have talked about, Mario Gila from Lazio, 23-year-old Spanish player, developed at Real Madrid, so they do have a potential like money advantage that they would get from that transfer. Lazio reportedly values him at 40 million euro. PSG reportedly have made an offer that would be slightly under that, but coming close to it. For him, his key strengths, the top one I think is his speed. Data says he's among the top 4% of central back in Europe's top leagues for his speed, which is quite impressive. And I think if you consider the fact that PSG tends to play very, very high on the pitch, having that speed to be able to cover the space in his back could be an interesting one to have in our defense. Other really like strong aspects of his game, his composure. He's a senior player at this point with some experience. He carries the ball out confidently and is clean with his passing. He's good in one-on-one defending, which as well like could be interesting because that's not necessarily the strongest point of Marquinhos. In terms of his suitability for PSG, I think the technical ability match well with Luis Enrique. He's also a Spanish player, so there is that kind of Spanish philosophy of looking at the game that could be an interesting match. The question mark here is more like, does he have the potential and even the skill set now to be able to really challenge Marquinhos? For all of his flaws, Marquinhos is like a world-class defender. It looks like he's going to be the captain of Ancelotti's Brazil. So we are talking about a defender who's definitely in the top 5 to 10 like best defenders in the world. Does Gila have the ability to rise to that level? I think that's a question mark, and one that the club will need to answer and make their opinion on. So who's the better fit for PSG? I think it's a tough one because I think both players tick a lot of boxes but don't necessarily tick all of them. If I had to pick one, I think Zabarnyi is probably a slightly more exciting player, but he's also a lot more complicated in terms of getting the transfer done. Bournemouth is asking for a lot of money. They want more money than what they got from Rouge Bleu to Real Madrid, so we're looking at potentially like 50-60 million euros, which is a big fee for a defender. And also there's a question mark of him being Ukrainian and how that would gel with Safonov or Russian goalkeeper in the locker room. So we'll need to stay tuned on this one. I think Gila is also a strong option, so we'll have to see. At the same time, I just also wanted to introduce a couple of other options that PSG could explore. There's been talks that there's a third potential player playing in the Premier League that PSG might be interested in. The name hasn't really came out. In the past, there was a lot of talk for Ibrahima Konate from Liverpool as someone that PSG might be interested in. I don't know if he's that third name. I think he's maybe like slightly too senior and too expensive and too difficult to make move from Liverpool. Even if there's contract conversation for Konate going on and that could help trigger something, my sense is that it might not be that player. I think the one for me, looking at the talent in the Premier League and the players who might be of interest, There's one name who I thought was, could be interesting as a dark horse candidate, and that's Jan-Paul van Hecke from Brighton. 24, Dutch defender, very strong and aggressive. He's ranked in the top 5% of EPL centre backs for tackles and interception. Very strong on the ball, fits a high pressing system, and I think potentially like very undervalued because Brighton's tend to be more of a mid-table team. At the same time, this year he was named Player of the Season in Brighton, which is saying something about what he brings on the pitch. He's also like talked about for a transfer to Napoli, I think. So there is some interest in Europe, and he could be that interesting, slightly lesser known central defender who could be additive. In terms of profile, I think it's a pretty close match for Marquinhos. Maybe even a bit stronger physically and in the air, and slightly stronger in defense. So could be an interesting one. Other name I wanted to bring up as well, and I don't think this one has been mentioned, but definitely an up-and-coming defender who could fit the bill as well, is Zeno Debast from Sporting Portugal. He's 21 Belgian international. He got transferred from Anderlecht to Portugal at the beginning of last season, so he only spent 1 year in Portugal so far, so it might be a little bit early for him to be moving up. But he had a tremendous season in Portugal, pretty sure Sporting won the title over there, and he's really introduced himself and made his spot on the team. He's got 87% pass completion in the Champions League games that he played, great composure, very strong positional awareness. He defends with a lot of maturity and a lot of strength, and is already being capped by Belgium. Maybe a little less physical than others, but obviously younger, smart, technically sound, and a lot of potential. So that could be another option for Luis Campos to look at. That was it for me. I think those are like the 4 names that I wanted to bring up. Like I said, there's a clock ticking on this one, so we'll definitely see in the next few days where PSG is going with this and whether we manage to secure one of those players and who that dark horse third candidate might be. I'm very curious to hear from you guys, like who do you think would be that best option? I think Zabarnyi is really like very highly talked about right now by a lot of people. He seems to be the front runner, and I think it'd be a very exciting signing. But really, let me know, what do you guys think? If you see any other potential player, and who would be the one who would excite you the most. This is Red and Blue, the home of PSG in English on YouTube. Please subscribe to get all of our future videos. Please hit the like on this one. Leave me a comment, and I'll be speaking to you soon. Bye bye.